From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
A dear friend of mine sent me an email that had a list of something called paraprosdokians. The first part of the sentence is rather benign and pretty, accepted and maybe known. And then the second part is this unexpected part that can be somewhat humorous. So I'll share with you a couple of paraprosdokians, okay, which Winston Churchill loved. A clear conscience is the sign of a fuzzy memory. I used to be decisive, now I'm not so sure. The last thing I want to do is hurt you, but it's still on my list. Women will never be equal to men until they walk down the street with a bald head and a beer gut and still think they're sexy. Sorry about that. Where there is a will, I want to be in it. Along that same one, where there's a will, there's relatives. Going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in a garage makes you a car. That's enough. I think you get the idea. So, it's an interesting word, and actually words are interesting, aren't they? Especially in how we weave those words together in our language. Certain words in our language, I believe, over time, move from obscurity to commonplace. And an example of that in the field of religion, at least, as I've found, is the word consciousness. Back in the 1960s and 1970s, really the word consciousness was not used very often, and it was just in little pockets of consciousness growth groups and things like that. And now it's used rather extensively and very commonly everywhere. That term, consciousness, is pretty well used. Certain words in our language over time have not only moved from obscurity to commonplace, but from sort of condemnation or rejection to acceptance. And again, from the field of religion, I come to a word that, in my own experience, it seems like was not all that accepted in earlier years and now has become. And that word actually is meditation. It was somewhat not received in the West in religion because sometimes there is a resistance to terms or aspects of religion from the East on into the West. And so meditation was a term that wasn't really well accepted in the 1960s and 1970s. Well, in the 70s is when I became a young minister, and I remember that some of the feedback and pushback I got about the word meditation was that it was the work of the devil. And so it was a term, even though in the Bible, and it was somehow carried an Eastern tone for people. And it just, again, shows you that the human tendency is to sometimes condemn what we don't understand or is different or is unfamiliar to us at the time. Of course, meditation now is very much accepted, everyone, by all people, and yet, although it's accepted, it's not necessarily understood by everyone either in terms of the impact, the meaning, and what it involves. But when you think about Jesus, and his teachings, and that they were delivered well before many of these terms that we use today, and actually well before the existence of such things as psychology. That word didn't even exist, really. Aspects of science, advances that we've made in technology, quantum physics, these are all terms and areas that just weren't there available to the people for him to talk about. Yet, undoubtedly, he understood the science that was beneath all of those things that we have discovered today in terms. And so he had to find other ways, really, to teach and convey many of these things. I believe that if Jesus were here today on the planet, walking the earth and teaching, that he would probably, I believe, be using these words like consciousness, ego, the unconscious, energies, vibrations, frequencies, mindfulness, resonance, and others I'm sure that you can think of that help to explain and clarify spiritual laws and principles and teachings. Today, what I'd like to talk to you about is really something called resonance. Resonance. And it's a word that is used a bit more in spiritual teachings in the spiritual realm, and it's been used in other ways as well. Jesus taught the importance of resonance, although he didn't use that word. That word wasn't, really available. And I'll give you some examples in a bit as to how he used and really taught that. But first, I'd like to explain, if I can, what we mean by resonance as best I can. It has to do, obviously, with vibration and the frequencies of vibration. It is most easily understood when considering things having to do with the vibration of sound waves, sound vibrations. If you take two guitars and they are tuned the same, and you lay them down side by side, and you pluck the A string of one of the guitars, and you will see that the A string on the other guitar alongside of it is also vibrating as well. And that is called sympathetic resonance. Okay? So you can think of an echo, which is basically sound waves that are bouncing back and forth across the walls of a canyon or some space that has a hard surface. In concert halls, as you know, the distance and shape of the structure plays an important role in design, and the desired result is what they call harmonic resonance. It is said that people who are not very good at singing sound much better in the shower. And that's because pure notes that they do emit in the shower cubicle are resonant, and that basically the less harmonious notes are dampened. Okay? So the point is, everything is vibrating. Everything is vibrating. And everything has a natural resonance, therefore, in its own vibration, a frequency at which it vibrates easily. And so in the case of like a shattering of a glass, the body of the glass has its own, unique resonance that it vibrates at. And if there is a force of another kind of vibration that comes along that is big enough and strong enough and forceful enough, it basically will break the glass and shatter it. So speaking spiritually along that line, every person basically is a vibrating mass of energy. You have to be, because all life is vibrating and pulsating with life. Everything is. A rock has energy that it is pulsating with. Whether we can see it or not, that is the case. And so we all create then our own vibrational field or frequency based on what it is that is dominant within the framework of our consciousness. And our consciousness, we're talking about what is dominant in terms of the thoughts we think, the ideas we hold, the beliefs that we have, the attitudes that we carry, the perspective and the outlook. Basically, we are vibrating at either frequencies that are more toward light or more towards a heaviness, a fragmentedness, a sense of darkness. Okay? So one way to think of it is that then from a spiritual perspective, in our analogy of the guitars, you can think of God as the guitar. It's always there. It's laying there beside you. And in a sense, you are another guitar. That guitar that is God is vibrating at a very high and sacred frequency. And the goal is for us then to begin to pick up and resonate with that same frequency of love and peace and faith, of joy and forgiveness and goodness. That frequency is always there with us. If we just become conscious of it, invite it, invoke it, call it in, we can be like the guitar that's next to it, be right aligned with it. That is there for us. So the point is we have to allow God and the vibrations of God to basically break and shatter the glass or the vibration or the frequency container that we have placed ourselves in or been living in. Many a person basically has their own little glass frequency that they are functioning from that needs to be shattered so that they can take into new levels, in a sense. There's a field of resonance that is our natural state as creations of God. And that natural frequency and vibration or state is referred to in Genesis as that part of you or that of you which was made in the image and the likeness of God, which means that you were made in the image to vibrate at the same frequency as God, as love, as unconditional love and light and joy and forgiveness, all of those that are characteristic of the divine. It is the Christ frequency. And so one could then say that in a sense, life is an echo, okay? What we put out, we get back. And so, when you are in an echo chamber or in a canyon and you go, hello, it goes, hello, 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 hello. Well, we're here to say, I am love, 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 love. It just continues on. And where does it leave off? There is no end. It just continues on out. So that basically that life and that energy continues on out to touch other people. And it's an understanding of how we're all so intricately really connected. We are our own guitar, if you will, and life is the guitar that is like laying next to us, and whatever is the vibration that we put out, the other guitar or life is going to give back to us. It's going to reflect back to us. It's going to echo back to us. And so Jesus had some things to say about this, and about resonance, about the spiritual echo, if you will, and about shattering states of consciousness that you or others have been locked into and busting through to higher ways. In the Sermon on the Mount, he said many things, of course, and one of the things that he said there was, and I quote, "Except your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven." And so what he's saying there is that essentially, except your frequency of love and light and way of being exceed that which is the frequency currently of the scribes and the Pharisees and what they're about. If you don't exceed that, you're not going to move into higher heavenly states, and that which is really all of what heaven is about. And so he was making that distinction. In another place, he said, "Love your enemies," and this is all really in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be children of your Father." And what's being said there is exceed the energy that's coming at you that may be people acting as though they're your enemy. So love them, rise to a higher frequency. Bless those that curse you. If they curse you, don't go into their energy level like that of the scribes and Pharisees. Exceed it, okay? So this is what he's always trying to get us to do, is to exceed what may be coming at us. We may be hit with somebody's echo, but that shouldn't become ours. That's the whole journey of spiritual awakening and growth. And so you should do good for those who hate you and pray for those who persecute you, and just be in that vibration. Why? That you may be children of your Father, that you may be true offspring of the frequencies of God, unconditional love. Okay? So Jesus is encouraging each and every soul to create a vibration of love that is higher than these things, and that can cancel them out, because anything of light cancels out anything of dark. All right? The darkness cannot live with the light, but you have to choose to be the light. You have to choose to resonate with the frequencies of light. He said, "If you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." And then he says, "But if you do not forgive men, neither will your Father forgive you." Now, I want to clarify there, because I don't believe that God doesn't forgive. It's either God is love and love all the time, or God is not. Scripture says, "I have loved you with an everlasting love." So God is unconditional love. can only love. But what he's talking about here is law, really. It's the law that is unforgiving. Again, it's the echo. What you put out, you're going to get back. If you stick a finger in an electric socket, the law of electricity is unforgiving. Okay? God can't help you. It's the law. And that law will prevail. You're going to get a shock or something worse. And it's not that God is doing it. It's that echo. You get back whatever is resonant with what you put out. And so it is this law of resonance, which is very much like the law of attraction. And so over and over, Jesus said, what you put out, you're going to get back. It's a resonant field. It's an echo. It's, that dynamic. So he said, judge not, lest you be judged. He said, forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. All of these things. And then he came to, and this is in the Sermon on the Mount as well, toward the end, he gives the golden rule, which is the summary of all of this, in which he's talking about resonance, really, without the word having been around then. But we're using it today because it's used today and it can be put in context. But as the golden rule and talking about resonance, what he said was, therefore, as if summing up all of these things that he said, therefore, all things whatsoever you want others to do to you, do also to them. And the next 5 words was, for this is the law. This is the law. Very powerful stuff. So Jesus was talking about resonance and the importance of creating a vibrational match in life. We say God can only do for us what he can do through us. We have to access that God. And if a person doesn't like what they are getting in life, they have to realize that the law is responding to the vibration that one is offering up. So in every moment, life seeks to give or match your vibration. It's the law that Jesus spoke of. It's the law of the echo, as I'm calling it today. As you give, so shall you receive. Whether it's positive or negative, that we in effect are and act like a magnet. It's the way that the world reflects back where we are in consciousness, how we're doing. Where the mind goes, energy flows. Energy is created, always, okay? So when it comes to relationships, and when it comes to career, or health, or business, or finances, one should not continue to talk about, think about, visualize what you don't want, or you'll just get more of it. And so sometimes that's what we're in conversation about with another, or in our mind, or worrying about and thinking about the outcome and the worst outcome, though it hasn't yet happened, all those kinds of things. So you don't want to, visualize that which you don't want. Even with what is. If you have circumstances, and that's what is, you accept what is, and then you rise above it. You exceed it in a vibrational field that you create, a resonance that comes to. So we attract into our life exactly what we are in resonance with, and that means people, places, things. When a person goes to matchmakers.com, they aren't putting in what they don't want in a person. They're listing all the things that they want in a person. They're describing the person who they feel they can resonate with. They're describing a person who they feel could be on the same page in many ways with them, be compatible with them. They're not submitting an individual that would be the vibrational opposite. Okay? So the big question then to ask ourselves really is whether we ourselves are a match for what it is that we're wanting in life. What are we wanting? What are we wanting in another person? What are we wanting from another person or a significant other? Or it could be a friend, or it could be a relative, or it could be a coworker. Maybe things aren't going well with somebody. So what are we wanting? What are we putting out, you see? Are we a match for what we are wanting from them, or wanting them to treat us in a particular way? Jesus again said, unless your righteousness exceed that of the other, the scribes and the Pharisees, you're not going to enter into higher heavenly states, which reflect love and light. So are we a vibrational match for what we are wanting to create in our lives? And I like to believe that one of the most certain ways to be happy in life is to simply, genuinely, authentically ask God to be in charge of our life. To develop that relationship where you are asking and inviting and invoking God to be in charge of your life and to be in charge of your heart as well. We want to resonate really with the heart of God. And love, of course, is the greatest power. Love can never take you into anything but the light. And so God is love, and God is the guitar of love that strums out a resonant field that brings people together in light. Now, you know, we've all met people in our lives that have strummed the heartstrings of love and taken us into them. People who've just somehow opened our hearts, and sometimes very quickly in a particular way. It might be somebody that was famous. It might be somebody just in our common life that we have met, and they just really made a difference. There are several people that come to mind for me in this regard. One is Og Mandino, whose name I've used before, but Og Mandino spoke around the country. He was an author, a best-selling author of a number of books, but his greatest, most well-known is the greatest salesman in the world. He's a very spiritual person. He wrote for Success magazine. When I met him for the first time, picked him up to come be a speaker here, he got off the at the airport, got into the car, and almost instantly, he made me feel like he was an uncle that I just hadn't seen for a few weeks. He had a gift that was just like, I've never forgotten, made you just feel so loved, and it was such a sweet energy. There was almost like anything could have come out of his mouth, but there were wonderful things. But that energy, that resonant field that he created was amazing. He put his arm around me and Howard. He called, Howard like we were buddies, and talked and joked and we laughed instantly like that. Sincerely, he said, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. He was very humble and modest, and said, anything that I can do to support you in your ministry, just let me know, Howard. It was just really sweet and genuine. And Og, had a time in his life where he was wounded. And wounded meaning psychologically and things, dealing with hurts. And he was an alcoholic, and he was sleeping on park benches, and his life was just deteriorated to nothing. And he came out of that, really, and found it through a spiritual path in finding God. Another person that really spoke to me in that way was Norman Vincent Peale. And I had the good pleasure of having him speak 3 or 4 times, once in my first ministry and 3 or 4 times here at this ministry. And he and Ruth, the first time we met, they were like family. They just were asking so many questions about Diana and I, our family, our kids, where we grew up, just everything. There was such a sincere and earnest desire to really know us, and they shared themselves so openly. It just felt like, again, family, and they had that knack. The third one I want to mention is the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama I had the good fortune of, through my association with the Association for Global New Thought, which I was blessed to be one of the founders of. And we were asked by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his people to facilitate something called the Synthesis Dialogues. And so the first one was in India, the next 2 were in Italy. And at the one in India and one of those in Italy, not only did we spend days with him in these dialogues, but I was able to have lunch with him 2 different times with a small group. And he was so, again, a wonderful energy, jovial. He'd throw his head back and laugh. He'd make jokes about himself. Again, a man that was full of heart, full of forgiveness based on what happened to his people being in exile from Tibet, and him the leader of those people. A wound that he had to carry, but was healing it through a heart filled with compassion and teaching that. And they all made an indelible imprint upon me. And all 3, were wounded to some extent in their lives. Even Norman Vincent Peale was very shy and lacked confidence at one time in his life. And yet, none of them stayed in that woundedness. They all shattered the glass and broke out of that and allowed the power of God to move. When a person is angry or judgmental or gossiping and talking negative about others, it's not that they're a bad person. It's basically that they are wounded. There is something that hasn't healed in them. And when we're wounded, then the ego takes over. And our egos resonate at vibrations of separation. And the ego keeps us in our heads and not in our hearts. And the ego takes a person out of love and into fear. And so when we are in ego or fear, the things that we think, the things that we say, the things that we do can become twisted, distorted, fragmented from the truth of who we really are. And we can even try or attempt to hurt others because we're hurting. I read Marianne Williamson, a wonderful writer. It was written on love. I saw where she wrote, either we are the wound or we are a center of healing. So either we are our wound that we're sitting on or we are a center for healing. We're one of the other or the other. In all our relationships and in all of life, that's a great question to ask ourselves. Am I being my wound? Or am I being a healing center? Am I being my wound, or am I being a healing center? If we're attacking, if we're being critical of others, judging, speaking negatively, we're in our wound, and we're in need of healing. And we have to ask, who am I not forgiving? Am I not forgiving myself about something? Or am I not forgiving another in something? A great question. Here at Unity Church, we're about trying to really create a higher resonant field of the divine energy so people can come into that and be shattering the containers of resonance that they have been imprisoned in. We invite all of and teach our volunteers to really allow God to enter into their heart and create as much of a loving, joyous state of being. So in whatever they're doing in service as a volunteer, it's coming from that space so that they realize that they are helping to create a wonderful resonant field. It's all about allowing God in to speak to us. We are all connected to everyone in this world. We are an echo that goes out and touches everyone and everything. We contribute to the overall consciousness of the planet. Love lifts us all up where we belong. And we need to remember to be in the heart, to be in the energy of the heart, to be in a resonant field. And so I invite all of you to sincerely and genuinely and powerfully ask God to help you exceed whatever the resonant field you have been living in that may not be satisfactory, that you begin to resonate with the love and the peace and the harmony that is inherent in your nature as a child of God, so that you can make a contribution to this world and to the earth we all share and the people that live in it. God bless you, and go in a resonant field of heaven.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.